Any of you all have Nintendo sets for your kids here? I think children and Nintendo are almost synonymous today, as they are in my house. There's one game that's a standard game. It's called Super Mario Brothers. That's Mario Brothers and Super Mario. Now there's a Super Mario 2. Well, in Super Mario, the little thing jumps along, and the goal is to save the princess. The goal in this business is to do what? To go direct. Actually, one of your first goals is to go 1,500 to do 100 progressive goals. Ruby Direct should be your battle cry. Go Ruby. But there are secrets all along the pathway of this. We've got a secrets book. They published a secrets book that I borrowed from a friend of mine that's now out of publication that we're going to copy. That tells where there's little trap doors and secret passageways and extra lives. But it took G.W. King last week to tell me that he knows how to do the 100 lives. The third world of the first round, right? When the duck or the turtle comes down the steps right before the flagpole. On the third step, you get your little guy, you come along the right, G.W., he jumps on the turtle, and then keeps jumping on the turtle. Well, that little Hummer came down, we jumped on him, G.W., and it didn't get anywhere. Just like some of y'all may know how to work depth, may know how to spend your time. It's going to take somebody physically showing you how to do this thing. Just telling you this today is not enough. That's why when I sponsor you, David, it is critical for you to go with me in depth. You never, ever leave you alone. I never just work your taproot for you. It is critical for you to go with me down your taproot. There's an old thing called WKRP radio. Remember that? Work, knowledge, right people, and personality. Those are the four, I consider the four factors that separate you from Crown Direct. And the last thing would be the system. WKRP is work, how hard you work the business. The people here today are 18 members. Now you're 12 plans a month or more. I'd love to tell you you could go direct by coming here once. I don't think you're that. What's a good word there? Naive. You know it's going to take consistent effort on your part month after month. Requalifying. The discipline it takes to come here month after month. Especially for the next 18 months. Gearing towards June of 1990. So keep the momentum you've got up now. Continue it, folks. We're proud of you for being here today. But the work you've done to get here today, continue that up. The knowledge, this business is so full of knowledge. It takes some specialized knowledge. There are secrets in this business that if you're willing to take the time and unearth those, it will magnify your work. It'll make your work yield better results. You always there? Because you won't get to the end of the month and go, boy, I've worked the business very hard this month. What did I accomplish? You weren't just active, you also got accomplishment. Never confuse activity with accomplishment. R is right people. You're going to have to go through some, in essence, the business is kind of a numbers game. But I've got some questions to ask you with, to challenge you with later on. You're going to go, wait a minute, I thought you said it was a numbers game. 12, 8, 12, 15 to 20 wide, 6 to 8, 3 to 4. You've heard all that, how to go down in 2 years, all the, basically you got to sponsor 12 people to find 3 good ones. That's what Bill's saying. But I'm going to ask you some questions that should stimulate your thinking along the way. I'm not going to answer the question, by the way. I'm just going to ask it. Maybe after we're all through today, I'm going to answer it for you. In my mild but humble but accurate opinion on it. Oh, it's going to be a fun day, I can tell today, yeah. WKRP. P is personality. Some of you all got to realize, it's like finding your own radio station. You're going to have to turn the radio dial to lock in on, to be willing to change in the type of person that some of you need to change into to be an effective leader. Now, I wish you could have seen me 15 years ago. Because I'm still changing. There's still things about me that make me nauseous. And it makes me nauseous. Can you imagine what it makes you? That's some of the people we sponsor. So, to me, personal growth is a continual process. Management skills and leadership skills should be a growth process, continual. You're going to find as you climb the management ladder or the management pyramid, as your responsibility, the numbers of people increase, your technical knowledge of your job, whatever your job description, decreases in importance, but your personality information needs to increase in importance. It becomes inverse. All right? So what are the most important books you can start working on initially? How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That doesn't mean you go out and try and sponsor a Dale Carnegie instructor. If he knew what he was doing, he wouldn't be doing that. Is that too harsh? You want to see these guys walking with Sears Roebuck suits? shoes with scuffed off toes, good people. But they found themselves, they're in an environment in which they cannot apply what they're teaching. They're not paid in proportion to what they know. If they'd wise up and be a little more intelligent and get in this business, boy, turn a lot of people off this tape, I can tell. I'm just saying, P, the personality part, be willing to look in the mirror and say, you need some personal growth. So WKRP, personality. The right people I covered, right? Got to go through enough people. S is the system. If y'all can understand probably the most important part of our system is the dynamics of working together. Understanding you as one person have limited credibility. But once you bring your prospect or your group back to the system, as has been said so clearly, turn your group over to the system or over to your upline, which is part of the system, in your case, head of your system. Now, if you'll turn your group over to them, they will strengthen the group for you by edifying you back to your people, which is something you can never do to yourself. That is a secret goal. That's the first secret, guys, that as your little things bump along, you just got 100 extra lives there. Learn to turn your people upline and edify your upline. At that point, your upline will always do what? Back to you. Or should if you're the upline. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If your downline brings people to you, what should it tell you? Edify them back to their people. That's why they're bringing them to you, to be edified to begin with, to meet you as an upline. That's why it opens a rally you should upline. That's why it opens a rally you should make sure your people get to your upline. Because that's what the upline will then turn it back. They'll build your credibility to your group and make your group stronger, and then eventually turn your group back to you, stronger than when you first turned it over to them. All right, that's the power of the system. The power of the system will eventually multiply all your efforts. Time. It is our most critical. What's the word I'm searching for? Most critical commodity. You be my brains over here. Thank you today. The hourglass. 76,000 little grains of sand at the top and the bottom here. 74,500, whatever. You've got 3 questions that have never been answered in any one specific tape. Parts of this question has been asked. They've all been asked and never been answered. All right, time, John, is my most critical commodity. First question, where do I spend my time to get the greatest results back out? How do you define productivity back out? How do you define productivity? Input as related to your output. All right? Number 2, how much time do I spend there? And number 3, what type of time do I spend? Those 3 questions have been asked probably by many people in this room. But there's no one specific place you can go to for the answers on those 3 questions until today. Well, drum roll, right? Blah, blah, blah. All right, let's start with number 1. Where do you spend your time? And I've got time to go back and review terminology with you. I mentioned about what a base was. When I sponsor someone, my goal is to establish a base or get people sponsored for those people. Ideally, 3 to 4 people. Bill will talk about the A1, A2, A3. When he says you got to sponsor 8 people, he's saying you got to sponsor probably 8 to get 2 or 3 for them. If you're lucky enough to know how to work depth, you won't have to. Okay. Where do you spend your time when you're working the leg? At the deepest base or the deepest potential base in the taproot. All right, that's where you spend your time. All right, I told you we'll cover more of this detail. If you have a question by that note, just write a question mark. We'll come back after it's all over today. But folks, I'm throwing out so many little secrets to you today. That's one. Wish I could sit up here and push a button, a little Nintendo thing would jump. So where do you spend your time? At the deepest base or the deepest potential base? That's why when I get counseling sheets, I look for wherever there are bases in the organization. If I sponsor David and I don't see David, if David's 15 wide but there's nobody sponsored for David, there's 15 people. You know what it tells me? He's not taking the time to start those people off properly. It's going to be a huge mixing bowl. It'll be 15 wide this month, 1 wide next month. Secure those legs. How do you know where the taproot is? You counsel with your upline. You continually draw your group out. I mean, folks, I can tell you in a matter of 5 minutes. I'd say, Eric, but Jack knows. You look at a counseling sheet. I look at person number 1 is width. Number 2, if their base is being formed under the width. And number 3, I look at their taproot formation. Are they getting a taproot formed underneath the person they sponsor? And the 4th thing, I look at what I call the pulses. You know, the number of distributors in that leg, the number of retail volume. You divide that into the retail volume, it tells me what the volume per distributor is. And I can tell you roughly whether there's self-use. Because it's on tape, I'd rather just have maybe covered later. I'll give you specific guidelines, what I think is a cutoff point. All right, y'all with me there? Or somebody get mad at me and go, well, it should be 5,000 personal use. Or somebody get mad at me and go, well, it should be 5,000 personal use. Or 5, you know, who cares? I'll come back to later based on 16 years of knowledge, what it should be. Nintendo secret, never be threatened by a growing leg. If you're 1,000 PV and you've got a $900 leg, never be threatened by one strong leg or by a growing leg. Never ever be threatened by a downline. Oh, might pass me. Remember, he's always in your downline. All right? If you're a diamond with a double below you, he's still... I'd love to be a diamond direct with 6 double diamond legs. I mean, would my ego be shattered? All the way to the bank, honey. So an adjunct to that statement there is, when you've got a downline that's growing very rapidly, you have one strong leg, never be threatened by it. Another adjunct to that is never pull out of the adjunct to that is never pull out of it. Stay in it. Why? Because the first thing is, when you got a good leg going, your first tendency is to go find some more and leave them. And more than likely, you were the magic that built that leg. And when you pull out of that leg and take your time and spend it somewhere else, that leg will start to die. You never leg. Therefore, you never threaten by leg. Y'all with me there? Questions? A guy asked me one time, John, at a distance, this is so important. Sometimes you get a good growing group at distance. A gentleman asked one time, well, John, I've got a leg out here in Oklahoma, and when I fly there, it grows. When I don't go there, it doesn't grow. How often should I go there? That's so funny. You all laugh because you know the answer right. And I watched this upline big pen, ask the guy, repeat that again, please. When you go there, it grows, and when you don't go there, it doesn't grow. Now, you want to know what doesn't grow? Now, you want to know what? How often should I go there? All right, one more time, please repeat for me the situation. All right, when I go there, when I spend $1,000 to fly there, it grows. But when I don't go there, it doesn't grow. How often should I go there? And this poor guy sat there. The upline asked him again. One more time, please. And then all of a sudden it went, aha, I guess. Even ignorance, after a while, I guess you could beat down to him. So how much time would he spend in the group? Well, if it grows when you go, you keep going. You live there. You're chasing a direct, folks. You look at the cumulative worth of a direct is pretty substantial. So you're chasing what I call the pot of gold. So hang in there. I love talking these generic phrases. I feel like I'm walking through a minefield today. I love this new Amway, right? Stay in there to the taproot. How long would I recommend you stay in there? I recommend you stay in there till the taproot and some momentum plus some leadership is established. Next question. What type of time, John, do I spend in the group? Now, if you haven't got time to write all this stuff down, I'm just going to throw it out to you very quickly today. I look on each one. When I look at my legs, I draw my legs out on a piece of paper. The left-hand side of the piece of paper, I list my legs in descending order of strength. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many PV checks is your goal to be paying out? 12 to 15. So list those in descending order of strength. On the right-hand side of the piece of paper are my options. Are the medications available to each patient or to each leg? Home meetings, covered dishes. At home, I've got a list of 39 medications available for these legs. If y'all got children, you ever seen over here? Over here is an apple. And they've got to match lines up. That's all you're doing here. You're trying to match the effective medication with the leg. Realize that each leg grows at different rates, has different needs, has different motivational levels. Therefore, you cannot think you can apply all the same pattern and all the same motivation to all these legs. Each leg has a different speed of incubation. Go with me there? And how do you really find that out? Through upline counseling. There's lots of wisdom in a multitude of counselors. You don't try to learn it all by yourself. You counsel upline. Okay, well, John, here's the group drawn out. What should I be doing in here? And with your upline's help, you help figure out what's the best medication. Your upline's a physician, right? All the pharmacy, and he's prescribing certain medications to your downline. Medications to your downline. If we could say that the secret to this business is all just showing the plan. The diamonds over here are the people that outwork the rest of you. I don't buy that. Knowledge multiplies your work. You've heard my old story about the man in Zimbabwe. My problem is keeping this to 2 hours today. He went there and came back, heard all this beautiful talking of this Billy Graham crusade, and came up on stage and said, exhortation without explanation leads to frustration. He was trying to say, you got me all pumped up to go out and I'm rah-rah. I'm motivated. And I've seen groups with great rah-rah leaders, man, boom, boom, boom. But unless they teach the necessary knowledge is confidence and it is power, folks, how to build a business. All they are a tuxedo out of desert. They're all excited with nowhere to go. They don't know where to go. They're out there bumping into the wall. Their Nintendo's falling off the cliffs. The turtles are eating them up, right? They don't know how to jump. There's no secrets. So today is not meant to exhortate you. It's meant to do what? Give you the knowledge. So when you go out here, and this is an arrogant statement, you know more than most all the people in the Amway business. But it may take you a couple more years to digest today. And that may be an arrogant statement on my part, but it's the truth. We're going to rapid fire at you today, and I expect you probably have to go back and write question marks by some statements. What does it mean by this? And then come back and ask him a couple more times. It's going to take a while, folks. There's a thing called tearing out of a group. I'll cover very briefly. This is what type of time you spend there, very, very briefly. You never want to do for a leg or what they can and should do for themselves. So when do you move on to and bring on some more width to another leg? Start adding on your width. When you've got somebody in that leg that can do what you know needs to be done without you telling them to do it. Go with me there? Right? It's called you tear out. And how you tear out of a leg is basically the lowest or the most important time involvement in that leg is first home meetings. Then once you have somebody else able to do home meetings, you then do what? You then phase to more of like a group meetings. I'm going to come to a point where you change from home to group in a minute here. A certain point in your structure. But once you have somebody else capable in that line of sponsorship doing effective group meetings, you then phase up to what's called teaching or nuts and bolts. You go in there, as an upline, you go in there, you teach that leg. It could be under the form of a covered dish where you're doing unity building plus teaching at the same time. Go with me there? I should stop asking that question. I was looking at it in front of you all, just shake your head. Whether you are or not, you just go, yeah, all right, John, human been today. The nuts and bolts of teaching, when you've got somebody else in there that can effectively teach, then you can tear out to the next level. Attitudes. You start doing more attitudes for the group. And if you're not a direct, where are you? You're in the home. It's more for a higher level. I'm just going to throw out a bunch of stuff to you very quickly. We're going to try to get as much as we can on this tape, all right? But once you got somebody else capable of doing attitudes, you're tiered to the highest level, and you never leave this next level, counseling. Then all you want to do is work with the head of the organization and counsel with them. Because if you have the head right, the body follows, correct? That's where there's a certain amount of ego submission necessary. And the true strength of a man is shown when he goes and submits his ego, first to God and to a fellow human being, and gets down. Right? That's an important part. That's the glue form. You may not agree with that statement. You don't have to. You don't have to sit down there. Basically, John, be nice. Let go of the pump handle. If you do not counsel upline, it is a form of subtle de-edification by not counseling the upline. Well, John, my upline didn't do anything. Then counsel with your next growing upline. Find a growing upline you can counsel with. I love these statements. Well, I'm the same pin as my upline. So what? He's got access to the next upline upstairs, which you don't have. You're both 4,000s. Why should I go counsel my upline 4,000? Because it sets a pattern of counseling necessary. We'll cover that later. I put a question mark by that. We'll cover that later on. That's more important stuff. What type of time? Carrying out. Little cute little phrase. Very simple. Let's get down to depth now. How do you work depth? Now, see, folks, this is why if you got to draw out of all the Amway world, let's draw out of all the emeralds, all the directs. Here's a huge body of directs over here. Next, a smaller body of emeralds and smaller body of diamonds. Add on so and so and so. It decreases. It's because these people over here, these diamonds out over here, are willing to work harder than these emeralds over here or these directs over here? I don't believe so. Maybe so. I doubt it. If a work is a separated factor, I honestly believe you all would hear, because you've proven you're willing to work. If you're here in this room, you've already proven to us you are the producers. You are willing to work. So work isn't necessarily the separating factor here. All right? K, knowledge. Very important. Let's go to the next one. R, the right people. I think if you're willing to work, you're willing to go through enough people to find the right people. P, personality. Could that be it? Quite possibly. You never know. It was in my case. It may take some radio dial. You may become a little bolder. You may have to become a little softer. You may have to change a little bit of your personality. That's a hard thing to do, folks. To look in the mirror and go, whew, maybe that's the problem. It's rare that's the problem. I honestly believe that when you go to Diver Club and see some of these guys, I'm convinced, I'm totally amazed. That's not a put down, especially within Brit groups. The Brits got a pretty homogenous group. And I hate to say, but there are some real gumbos out there. Y'all know, some of these guys, I go, my God, how do these guys find the bathroom? That's why as you grow the business, it's going to give you so much hope. I wish I could videotape me 15 years ago with welts in my forehead where I smashed beer cans. I wish you go, that's John Crowe, potential double diamond director years down the road. You go, no way, look at that guy. Impossible. It's a combination of manufacturer system and all that stuff. But today, honestly, we're going to focus on one letter, K. In my opinion, the thing that will separate most of you all in this room who are willing to do the work, and do you realize one thing? You as a person will change self-image-wise and personality-wise with consistent work. That's a secret. You want to see your self-image dive? Have bad work habits. You want to see your self-image increase? Have consistent good work habits. Another night out some other time. So what's the easiest way to change the P? Do what you're doing, but do it consistently. When I started growing in stature to myself and other people, my wife, I was very consistent in my efforts. My confidence level grew. K, knowledge. Let go of the handle, John. I'd love to be able to spend time with you. I'd hug each one of you and just tell you, don't worry about who you are now. Who you are now can change. I did. And what you can become stagger you. And what you are now is God's gift to you. But what you become is your gift back to God. Actually, I used to wear that in this t-shirt. And it's true. The potential you all have within you, John, I'm talking about my favorite subject now, you people. You're an iceberg. Depth, John, knowledge. All right, width equals profitability. And you've seen Greg Duncan's computerized chart where it shows a Ruby Direct with $15,000 volume, paying out 3 PV checks, makes $960 per month income, and a 4,000 PV paying out 7 PV checks makes $960 a month income. Shows you the same chart how if you're carrying a $22,000 $500 volume and break a direct and don't maintain Ruby sidewall or Ruby volume, you lose about a $20,000 year income. So the profitability is a science. If you're serious about this, get your little calculator out and play games. We've also got a little chart showing how much you make at the direct level for each 300 PV group you bring on. I mean, folks, it's very simple to figure the math out. At least it is right now. What are you laughing at? They can't see that, can they? No eyes on this. Profitability. Goal is 12 to 15 PV checks. Goal is really ruby volume. If you go out to Sheldon Lehman and some of his rubies out here, y'all doing all right, aren't you? Chuck Boyer, Mel Williams. Is Ruby a nice place? Want to know a nicer place? Emerald Direct with ruby side volume. Want to know a nicer place? Diamond Direct with ruby side volume. Want to know a very nice place? Direct volume for 12 months. Probably very good initial goal. But definitely ruby. Very sweet place. All right, here's a general rule of thumb for you. Depth equals your security, and stability. It's like a kite's tail. Now, I'm going to make a statement here. I'm not sure why this works, but I know it works. Why depth works so effectively, I'm not exactly sure. I can tell you this, though. It does. I haven't quite figured out all the mystique and mystery behind this, but it works somehow. I've tried to figure out in my little way to categorize it, but all I can tell you is what I'm going to tell you today does work. Exactly why, I've tried to explain it. I'm not really sure why it works so well. I may never know. All I can tell you is if you do this, you'll be rich. Is that pretty neat? Let's keep it real simple to you guys. All right? Width equals profitability. Depth equals stability and security. It's like a kite's tail. Imagine a kite here with all these little tails hanging off it. Would it fly very well? But you got that kite's tail coming off. What's also analogous to your tap root when you're working the leg. All right? Width always precedes your depth. You can't get into depth unless you've got proper width. So you got to have the proper width to be able to get in depth. The width is the doorway to depth. So y'all just bear with me today. It only hurts for another hour. Here's a good rule of thumb for you. If you're keeping less than half of your PV check, bring on some more width. If you're keeping more than half of your PV check, work your depth. Good, just a general rule of thumb. All right, here's your goals for working your depth. You want to try and get 4 deep as quickly as possible. Because by the time you get 4 deep, they'll start listening to you. It's funny how people you personally sponsor will never listen to you. Oh, never. I'm going to say that never. Generally, know as much as you know. Right? Why that is? I don't know. Remember, don't ask why today. I'm not sure of all this stuff. Don't ask why today. I'm not sure of all this stuff. I'm just telling you what to do. 4 deep is your goal. You want each of your legs to get 4 deep quickly to establish initial momentums in that leg. But then after you get your 4 deep in that leg, you want to go and take that tap root 10 deep to secure that leg. All right? 4 deep, you get somebody to listen, and you set the initial momentum, you establish the momentum in that leg, but 10 deep locks that leg in. Your responsibility as an upline is to build a model leg for Rich. My goal if I sponsor you, Rich, is to build a model leg or a tap root leg for you. That's my responsibility as a leader, as your upline sponsor. And then what I want to do is have in your leg a leader, backed by a leader, backed by another leader. Now what's a leader, John? Well, that's a rough term. Well, that's a rough term, isn't it? A leader is somebody who serves. That's probably my first. You got to say, John, how can you tell your leaders? They're willing to serve. They're not looking to be served. They're always there early. They're always willing to help. They're there late. They're aggressively pursuing the system. Pretty good, aren't I? Is that generic enough over there, guys? I've been too specific. Aggressively pursuing the system. Pretty good. All right? I'm looking for leaders with leaders with leaders. How deep you want to go? As deep as necessary to find those leaders that do what you know needs to be done without you telling them to do it. And here's the important secret. When I'm telling people what to do in a group, when I'm guiding them through the system, and I tell them what to do next, if they don't, then I know I haven't got a leader. All right? If I say, okay, here's what you do next, then I watch. If they don't, what do I know? I haven't got a leader. A leader will follow the guidance of the upline. And leadership is very rarely given, almost always taken. Your ultimate goal in each one of your legs is to, again, general historical tape here, is have a profitable emerald in each one of your legs. That's why you should build in 3s and 4s in the leg as you go down your taproot. If you look at the board here, your taproot should be looking like this. You should be building some width as you go down the taproot, which is the main leg you're working in. And you want it to have some width there, some bases, as I call them, built. Number one, for when you bottom out in depth in the leg, you've got a place to back up to and go over. You got some options of firewalls built above you. Right? Long term, what your goal is to have profitable, important word there, profitable emeralds in each one of your legs. Right? Because that secures those legs. When you've got a guy income more than he's willing to give up, he's not going anywhere. The old Austin gentleman. Think I can quit this business? Listen, I got nowhere to go. I can't go somewhere else. IBM will never pay me for as little as I do. They're not going to let me nap in the middle of the day. They're not going to let me do all the things I'd like to do. So I've got to build this crazy thing. Tree analogy. Let's just talk forests. Are the foresters in here still? Where are my foresters? Is the general rule of thumb to say if you have a tree here, except for the general Sherman, the roots are shallow. They all intertwine, right, on the surface more. But generally, you've got a taproot with a tree. Is it a good rule of thumb to say the taproot generally goes as deep as the tree is high, generally? You could also say probably the secondary roots, or what I like to call the peripheral roots. Big words. Little roots come off the big root, John. Little peripheral roots, right? Spread out widthwise as wide as the tree fold. Little peripheral roots, right? Spread out widthwise as wide as the tree foliage is above the ground. Again, there's a balance, a beautiful symmetrical balance. So what do you want to do when you're working leg? You want to get a good, healthy taproot built. Call it a primary leg if you want to. Call it a taproot. I like the word taproot. And you will find if you get a good taproot established for this leg, that taproot will feed all the other little secondary legs. It gives that leg a point for them to tie into for identity, unity, excitement, momentum. But the primary leg will feed all the little secondary legs. That's why my responsibility when I sponsor you is to establish for you a taproot leg. And I guess if people say, John, how have you done what you've done? I'm very disciplined. I'm very focused. When I sponsor someone, my goal is to nail that taproot, to get the taproot established. And I don't shotgun everywhere. You're not going to find me going everywhere. I go only in the taproot. But there will come a time where you will shotgun. There will come a time later in that leg's history where shotgunning is allowable because the volume will be paid by a point where the volume flows to what I call the fulcrum point. You may be shotgunning around throughout the whole leg in order to generate volume that all flows up to that one point you're being paid on. But initially, you want to establish the taproot. We can spend so much time together today. All right? Say yes, John. And it makes me feel all right, I'm good. We're making. If you look on the board here, you're going to see 3 examples. What I call typical legs. You're going to find one leg where the person has sponsored a bunch of people personally. So he's wide here. Not very wide, but he's wide. I could draw this out, let's say 12, 14, 15 wide. Let's say 12 people underneath him. It's going to be a continual replacement process. All right? What I like to do when I counsel with somebody, I like to look at their width, number one. Then under their width, see whether or not they're establishing basis for the people they sponsor. And if they're not, they're probably not taking the time to go over the list of names with them, teaching some telephone invites, maybe do some quality invites for them. He's just sponsoring you and running on sponsoring some more people. It takes some time to establish somebody, folks, all right? Don't think by just running out you're going to find people by going your width. You got to take some time with the people you sponsor, all right? So you look at your first one leg here, which is this example, the worst one leg here, which is this example, the worst case, the third choice. Guy very wide with nobody else sponsored underneath him. The second choice here, which has got somebody, he has somebody sponsored, who in turn has somebody else sponsored, who in turn has somebody else sponsored. And so you got a very skinny, very narrow leg here, in this case maybe 6 or 8 deep. Not bad. You can go emerald and diamond like this, but ideally you would like a leg like this, your first choice. When you sponsor somebody, take the time to really get them kicked off properly. List the names, quality invite, teaching the role-playing, the telephone techniques, because your goal is to do what? Put David here in a position that if he quits, it actually benefits you more. All right? If David has 3 or 4 legs sponsored, is he going to quit? Probably not. But if he does, what do? As Rex Renfro says, so what? You hold a party. You thank him very much. For now, instead of 1 leg, you got 3 or 4 legs. So it's selfish for you to do that. But ideally, what you would like to do is get some people sponsored for David, the person you're sponsoring. As Bill Britt says, pick the best of the litter. Is pick the person that you think is going to be your doorway to depth. And you do the same procedure for that person. You pick the best there, and then try and get 3 or 4 people sponsored for him. And if you can build this process, folks, in 3s or 4s like that, 4 deep, that'll be about a $1,500 leg. You take that same process, about 6 to 8 deep, it'll be about a 4,000 PV leg. By the time you take that process 10 deep, you will either found a direct or have a direct. And this is not from my folks, this is from over 100 diamonds of experience. You go over 100 diamonds of experience. You go to the Go Diamond Weekend and ask over 100 diamonds. How deep were they when they either broke the directs, their 6 directs, or found the people that went direct? You're going to find 90% of the time it's within the first 4 to 6 layers. Y'all with me there? I'm just throwing out a lot of stuff to you here. I hope it settles in here, makes some imprints in the computer there. Consider this. No answer, right? There's your first question, and no answer to it. What would be the difference between sponsoring 15 to 20 people personally, which if you remember what Bill Britt said, 15 to 20 will yield you 6 to 8. We'll go later, 3 to 4 ready to go now. All right? Same thing as the 12A12. You sponsor 12, you get 3. That's another way of saying it. All that 12A12 does is put a time constraint on it. That's all it does. That's all we're saying. To establish momentum, P equal MV. That's all we're saying. To establish momentum, P equal MV. Put enough mass in with enough velocity that you establish your momentum. Your physicists out there, P equal MV. We have a fun day there, aren't we? Still with me, John? I love you, buddy. Makes me appear smart. It's not even my notes here. That's great. This genius comes out of the subconscious like that. Where'd that come from? Man, I know where it came from. Man, boom. You're right. There we go. What is the difference then between sponsoring 15 to 20 wide or sponsoring 6 to 8 people and helping those 6 to 8 people get 3 to 4 wide? Because in essence, you're trying to find doorways, right? Well, if you sponsor 15 to 20 people, there are 15 to 20 doorways, correct? How many doorways have you found by sponsoring 6 people, 6 to 8 people, and helping each of the 6 to 8 sponsor 3 to 4? In essence, you established the same number between the two methodologies there. One will give you a great deal of width, but you know the second one will do? Give you a higher retention rate, longer term profitability. The other one will give you a shorter term profitability. But if you sponsor 6 to 8 and help them establish their legs, take some time to establish people for them. That's why, folks, depth takes more work than width does. Y'all with me there? That's one of the little Nintendo secrets. Depth takes more work and more patience. But the long-term returns from building depth properly are so much greater than building width. If all you do is build width on and never secure that width, you'll have a continual job. Because long-term depth will always pay you more. Definitely pay you more than width ever could. All right? Plus, it's more secure. All right? Plus, it's more secure. If something happens to your ability to produce and you build your whole group on width, what happens to it when you're gone? You haven't got anything anymore. So by securing your legs, you're building security for yourself and your family. That's why you get to find some people that, anyway, we can tell you so many stories on that. What's another reason why you build depth? But when you build depth, when you are physically going down in the leg and doing the teaching as you go, when you build depth, building depth keeps the information pure It keeps the pattern pure throughout that whole leg. Because then the head of the group is going down in there, right, and teaching as he goes, therefore eliminating the need for innovation, eliminating the confusion, because the teacher of the pattern is down there personally teaching the pattern without being diluted through a variety of people. Depth then will then minimize your turnover. Error will then minimize your turnover. Because if you're working your depth, it gives each person a vested interest or something to lose underneath them. Therefore, when you're working your depth, it's going to minimize your turnover rate, therefore increasing your retention. All right? And if any of you ever had huge volume fluctuations in your PV and BV, the best way to have minimizing volume fluctuations, anytime I see a leg that it fluctuates greatly in volume, 9 times out of 10, if they draw their group out, they're very shallow legs. If you get the deeper the legs, it stabilizes the volume like a kite's tail does. So the best way to stabilize your volume is to get your depth root, your tap roots established. Next page. And a real secret that some people know, some people don't know. You will know now. Volume will always domino. Is it 1,000 PV? He pushes for 500 more. If he's got a leg below him, 1,000 PV, all he's got to do is get 500 more PV and jump another PV bracket and make more money. You understand what I'm saying? So by building depth, you're going to find volume will actually domino out of depth. That's probably one great reason it works. You're appealing to the basis instinct people have, capitalistic greed. Nothing wrong with that. Another good reason to work your depth is that you're trading on those people above them, indirect pressure versus direct pressure. Heavy stuff. Was if I sponsor David, let's not get all hung up on what he does or doesn't do. So many people get so emotionally involved in the people they personally sponsor that if you can get David sponsored and access his list of names, that's why you want to get through David as quickly as possible, or around him, whatever the case might be here. Now, get some people sponsored 3 wide for him. And if I get this person here properly utilizing doing the things that need to be done without you telling him to do it, if he's utilizing the whole pattern in the system properly, if he's doing what's right, does it matter whether David is or not? No, not really. Here's another secret. Sifting. Opening the doors, going through numbers of people to find the right people. Remember the old going through numbers of people to find the right people? Remember the old 80-20 rule? Sifting. The sifting process is magnified in depth. Why? Because you can work so many people personally. But down in depth, you can put the plan in front of more people more rapidly. All right, greater numbers of people. So therefore, you're actually going through a greater number of people to find the leaders in depth than you could just by bringing on people personally. So your sifting process is magnified in depth. Beautiful statement Wayne Martin made once that I've never heard too many other people mention it. It made me wonder how many people really listen to this business. As Bill Brett says, how many people have a, Jane Bell hates this statement, but y'all bear with it, don't condemn it. So many people have an affair with Amway, they never get married to it. They're playing their Amway game, they never get committed to it. That's why some of the statements I make today, you all are going to think is cute. There's going to be a few of you out there that are going to go, man, that's great. But it may take you 2 or 3 years of beating your head against the wall to learn I could have saved you years of work if you had just grasped a few of these ideas. Because it takes a long time to unearth some of these secrets, but they are secrets, folks. I'm giving the manual today. I'm taking GW with you in your home saying, this is where the duck comes down. Heavy stuff. Was if I sponsor David, let's not get all hung up on what he does or doesn't do. So many people get so emotionally involved in the people they personally sponsor that if you can get David sponsored and access his list of names, that's why you want to get through David as quickly as possible, or around him, whatever the case might be here. Now, get some people sponsored 3 wide for him. And if I get this person here properly utilizing doing the things that need to be done without you telling them to do it, if he's utilizing the whole pattern in the system properly, if he's doing what's right, does it matter whether David is or not? No, not really. Here's another secret. Sifting. Opening the doors, going through numbers of people to find the right people. Remember the old 80-20 rule? Through numbers of people to find the right people. Remember the old 80-20 rule? Sifting. The sifting process is magnified in depth. Why? Because you can work so many people personally. But down in depth, you can put the plan in front of more people more rapidly. All right? Greater numbers of people. So therefore, you're actually going through a greater number of people to find the leaders in depth than you could just by bringing on people personally. So your sifting process is magnified in depth. Beautiful statement Wayne Martin made once that I've never heard too many other people mention it. It made me wonder how many people really listen to this business. As Bill Britt says, how many people have a, Jane Bell hates this statement, but y'all bear with it, don't condemn it. So many people have an affair with Amway, they never get married to it. They're playing their Amway game. They never get committed to it. That's why some of the statements I make today, you all are going to think is cute. That's great. But it may take you 2 or 3 years of beating your head against the wall to learn I could have saved you years of work if you had just grasped a few of these ideas. Because it takes a long time to unearth some of these secrets. And they are secrets, folks. I'm giving you the manual today. I'm taking GW with you in your home saying, this is where the duck comes down, third world, first level. Jump on him right here. By the way, I need you to come over to my house to show me that. Because I'll be darned, I jump in that duck, I'll be darned if I get him to do anything but sit there and fall off the stairs. We took the warp zone, the third world, got him, and still to get 100 lives. All we did was get eaten and killed. All right? Here's a statement Wayne Martin made. If 15 to 20 wide will yield you 6 to 8 people that will go later probably, 3 to 4 ready to go now, if that works horizontally, won't that also work vertically? In other words, if you get a certain number of people up, let's say 15 to 20 deep, by that point, you should have found 6 to 8 leaders. All right? And if you didn't find them, you may not be able to recognize them. Which goes into a whole other problem you're having, which we haven't got time to solve today. That's why he counts with the upline. That's why I go back to the statement. The depth takes more time and more work. Actually more work and more patience than width does. Here's a very arrogant statement to you. I have absolutely no problem bringing on personal sponsors. Why? Because you will always get people to believe as you believe. If you have a problem personally sponsoring, probably they're believing like you believe. Whew. How's that for you? See, why? I can go out and sponsor people anytime I want personally. We gave here. We gave away another one, right, Mike? Because I have no problem. I believe in this thing so deeply. I love the cold contact. I get the biggest kick out of it. Go around and pretend I'm a big businessman. I get the biggest kick out of interviewing people, posturing people. To me, it's a big game. I get a blast out of it. I love just collecting names and what do you do? Just playing with people. It's the biggest kick. But why do I have no problem personally sponsoring? Because you will always get people to believe as you believe. But the trick is, once you sponsor them, what do you do with them? You've got to take the time to let them incubate. You can't pressure them. You can't put direct pressure on them and push them along the road faster than they're ready to go. Faster maybe than their self-image warrants it. Let them grow. Let the system work on them a while. We're about to go into the most important part of the day, believe it or not. We haven't gotten to it yet. In other words, it allows, if I sponsor you, David, up here, and I'm working depth down in here, it allows, and I'm working, I'm not worried about whether you come to things or not, or what you're doing, whether you're marketing products. I don't care. Well, gee, he's not even using the toothpaste. If somebody down here is, do I really care about what you do or don't do? You've got to learn a certain amount of distance in yourself. You know, it sounds a little harsh there. It's a tough love and a tender love. But how many 3% checks do you get paid in this leg, folks? 1. How many people are you looking for in each one of your legs? One? So David has led me through his list of names. Maybe he led me to Joe, who led me to Fred led me to Alice led me to Geraldo. But more than likely didn't do it. Who led me to Phil, who probably didn't do it either. Led me to Joe, who did it. Who led me to Phil, who probably didn't do it either. Led me to Joe, who did it. Well, if Joe does what he needs to do I worry about what all these other guys do? No. That's important to understand that. Vital point. But the whole time while I'm working in depth, if you keep depth going, you keep the volume growing. An important statement. As long as you got your depth continuing going, folks, your volume will grow. So rule of thumb, you keep depth going, you keep volume growing. Also, if you keep depth going, you keep your momentum growing. Also, I let David incubate at the top of the leg. I'm trying to get this in. Whew. Close this down here. Mike was riding over the car with me today, and I said, Mike, you know where my confidence grew? In legs that I took 15 deep. That means wrong. College students and high school students, right? When I was 23 years old when we started this thing, so I sponsored a bunch of drunks. But you know what I learned by working depth and taking one leg 15 deep and eventually the whole thing quit? Why? Because I didn't know what to do. But I got my plan down pretty well. My plan got down pat. I learned how to tie a tie properly. Learned how to polish shoes. My confidence grew in depth. Very critical. That's going to lay you up. That will open the door for one of the most important points to make later on today as we finish the day up here. Your confidence will always grow in depth, but don't hide in depth. Don't fool yourself into thinking. Now, there'll come a time later on in your business where depth, I'm sure it's more important than Bill Britt to work depth now than it is width. I'd rather have Bill talking to thousands of people than one or two. There comes a time where the statement isn't trying to go direct. Your direct's trying to move on. When you work in depth, don't hide in there and justify you're being creative. Depth is a very easy place to hide and fool yourself into thinking you're building your business. Right? Well, the battleground is really in width. But width doesn't take as much work as depth does. You keep momentum growing by keeping depth going. Confidence will grow in depth, but don't hide there. Psychology depth. A burning building. If I got a building here, David, 20-story building, and you're up here on the 20th floor, and you hear there's a fire down here on the first or second floor. What do you do? Well, let's say you're on the 15th floor, and you hear there's a fire on the 20th floor. What do you do? Well, hope they don't get charred too much up there. You don't worry about it too much. But if you get a fire, it's parachute time, right? And it works in this business. Exactly why? In direct pressure again. That's why there's a statement I've got here in red. Your downline will always motivate you more than your upline ever could. Write it down. Activity in your downline and success in your downline will always motivate you more than activity and success in your upline ever will. Why you want to work depth? Still haven't gotten how to work depth, have we? Important point to remember here. Remember not to make depth as a chain of command. Some people will come into this business and when you get depth formed like this, turn that taproot into a chain of command. Well, before you can call me, this guy here, you must call through me. And I'll tell you this irritates me, and I hope this gets to where it's not supposed to go. Because I tell you that it irritates me, and I hope this gets to where it's not supposed to go. Because I tell you that it ticks me off, John. Calm down here. When you get some guy sets up a little chain of command here and says, this is my group, those are my people below me. You want people below you, go walk around a graveyard. Until these people go goal direct, nobody has the legal right to tell you to stay out of their group. Because those people are as much yours as they are his. And the minute I have somebody sit there and say, if I have some person screwing up here, not paying PV checks, not doing what's supposed to serve his group, not training, not motivating, not supplying the three things Amway says he has to do. Well, I'm going to send this right up that old, calm me down. Horse, you want to sit up here and calm me down, buddy? But the minute I have a cancer here, it is critical for the upline to work around that cancer, or that cancer will kill that whole leg. And use other people. There's a few things that hurts me in this business. When I find people unwilling to serve their downline. And when you find an upline that is willing to serve them, but they become a personality block, the upline has every right to go around that person. And if this person here is having problems with PV checks, training, motivating, supplying, then it is imperative for this downline, for the upline to start dealing personally with that downline. You're not eliminating these people. In fact, when you're working in depth, it's important to always edify the people in there. If they're edifiable. Boy, how'd my blood pressure shoot up on that one? What happened there, boy? My adrenaline popped up on that one. The problem is I've run into situations where I've seen people steal the dream of other people. There's a very few times that I get very upset. I don't mind if some other guy wimps out. But don't wimp out. But don't whip out and take other people with you. You with me? That's the only time I get very angry. When some guy hasn't got enough guts to keep his own dream alive, now he sets his own little goal to steal, see how many other dreams he can steal. That's a line like the Alamo you cross, baby, and you're not going to go to terms. One arm, one leg and all, I'm still dangerous. Because I got big friends. Does that make sense? When you get the mentality of what I call little Napoleon setting up camp down there, and all information has to flow through him, you get it as imperative for the minute you see that to start calling around that person. Because that will be a communication block. And the minute that happens, it should be your signal flag. Work around it. 95% of the problems why most people cannot get in depth is they work through people and they don't work around people. All right? All right? I'm going to come to a point where you work through people. There will come a time you work through people. When you finally find a leader, that's when you work through them. But until you have a leader, you have to work around them. The only way to keep your depth going there is to work around people. And that is a concept not understood by the corporation or by most people in the business. And I'll just tell you this. I'll argue that to my grave. Right or wrong, I'm right there. Anyway, again, if you're working down below a person, it allows not just the top, but all the people in between there to incubate through indirect pressure. Oh, here's an important point. When the upline works in the primary route, if I'm down here 8 deep, Dave, in your group, which way are the arrows going? Up or down? Which way? Always down. Trust me. Always down. You never do a pull-together meeting up, except for a teaching session, except for like a cover dish or things. But to keep depth growing, if the director or somebody else is coming downline in their tap route, and the primary leg and all the little secondary routes are tying into that home meeting to take advantage of group dynamics and numbers, you always do the pull-together meeting down in depth. So the arrows always go down. You never pull a meeting up the group. Because anytime you pull up, you're losing your momentum again. You got to take your depth, continually pushing the bag out deeper, deeper, deeper. Depth will in itself cause some unusual problems, as you know. Pickup, when you got leg 10 deep, how do you handle pickup? Ordering, there's ordering problems, how do you handle pickup when you got leg 10 deep? How do you handle pickup? Ordering, there's ordering problems, how do you handle order? Well, this guy orders one day, this guy wants to order one day later. PV checks, ordering. So depth in itself causes some real challenges in the business. I've not got time to cover those with you today. To be honest with you, that's my wife's function. And as Joe Govero knows, anytime you have a very rapid growing leg, Jack knows, you know who's best at that side of the business and working at the problems there? She is. Because the decisions I make sometimes are stupid and emotional and You know, she's a lot more sympathetic. And anyway, make sense? So ask her. Best way to figure out what to do when there's problems about PV checks in a leg 50 deep. It goes from here to Albuquerque and back to Mississippi, but to Michigan. Check with your upline. They've been through it. This is why we came. We're going to finish this up today. How you build depth. That's probably the most important part. Again, I said earlier, what you always want to do is try to, in a leg, somehow build a base. So here's a leg I'm working down. Now, does it matter? Bear with me here. If the base is up here 1 deep or 8 deep. I said you want a base in each one of your legs. John, why do you have what you have? Because I'm focused. I'm dogmatic to the point I will get a base somewhere in my leg. Be it at the top of the leg up here or 8 deep. Now, ideally, how would I like the base to be formed? Spontaneously, by itself. I would rather that person go 3 wide under his own power rather than me having to come down, make a list of names, do 12 telephone quality invites, all that stuff for him. If I'm drawing a leg and all of a sudden I see some place 4 wide, where do you always spend your time initially, like I said? At the deepest base in the leg. All right? Now, if I'm down here 8 deep and that leg goes 3 and 4 wide, how many legs do I work for that person? I can only work 1, right? My job as the upline is to do what? To stay in the primary taproot and not to shotgun all around the other legs. Why are you trying to build in 3s? Because if you do bottom out at 4 or 5 deep, you can then back up that leg and go over horizontally and go back down. Right? It leaves your options up. We call them firewalls or points of edification. Call them what you will. Different diamonds, call them different things. But let's say I'm down here 8 deep. That's where I'm going to spend my time. And what you want to see a powerful tool? Not everybody understands this because not everybody's got a leg like this. But when you do get legs that's like 8 or 9 deep and there's 3 or 4 wide down here, you then got, I promise you, somewhere everybody's got a leg like this. But when you do get legs that's like 8 or 9 deep and there's 3 or 4 wide down here, you then got, I promise you, somewhere in between where you are, there's 8 deep here, somewhere in those 8 layers there, there's other people in there that can work those 3 legs with you. So what you can do is either fan them out or orchestrate them. You'll work this one leg and pick some other people in here above there, the 8 layers in there, to work some of the other legs. All right? You orchestrate them. Say, okay, now, Joe, you're going to go down Fred's leg. I'm going to stay in Alice's leg here. I tell you what, Herman, why don't you work down this leg here? And you start orchestrating the resources that are available to you to start keeping the depth going. That you're also putting on hands-on teaching here, how to teach these people to do depth. Bill said for many years, you can't work more than 4 legs, good legs, effectively at any one time. Well, John, if that's true, 5 to 6 good legs with a good system. Because then the system, that's why what I see happening now in Harrisonburg, you're getting a momentum, you're getting a system established. So if you're down there, Sheldon, you can work many legs with a good system because you can tie all the legs into the function. That's where the system builds your group for you. And once that connection of knowledge makes for you all, once you connect that, you go, wow, it's important to take advantage of a system and to get a system established if you don't have one where you are. Or to tie into one. That's why Bill has this global system. Secure as you go. As you're working down a leg and you get about 8 to 10 new faces, what do you want to do at that point? Maybe 10 to 12 new faces. You want to gel it or what I call secure it. Pull them all together and have a cover dish. Who should do to the cover dishes? Should the 1,500, should the 4,000? Should the direct them? Check with your upline. Who's ever available? Remember the tearing out? Who's ever able to do them? When I find a base that's either the top of the leg or 8 deep, it doesn't matter where in my leg I've got a base. As long as somewhere in each one of my legs there is a base. Now the only place I spend my time, incidentally, is at the bases. That's the only place I'm going to focus. That's why I'm very focused about establishing bases in my legs. And who do I spend my time with in the base? The base leader, the guy that is 3 or 4 wide. Now, if it is very deep, to secure that base leader in depth, I'm going to orchestrate all the resources above that point. Again, fan them out down those legs. If you find a guy 10 deep here with 15 legs, well, you got 10 layers of resources to tap from to get down and fan them out through all those legs. But there does come a point, you have to go from house to house, folks. Definitely to get 4 deep, probably to get 10 deep. I told you there comes a time where you switch from house to house to house to house. That will get you 4 and probably 10 deep. But once you get the momentum established to 4 deep, the taproot dug in at 10 deep, and I recommend at that point you begin changing your philosophy, how you work that leg. No longer do you work it from a single house to a single house, but you then work that leg as a whole unit. You then start working that whole leg as a group. Because by 10 deep, you can start tiering out from the home to a group meeting. Now, you know where most people make mistakes doing that? Is the distance. They tier out at distance legs too soon. Because they want to get to a distance point and do what? Jump right to group meetings. The minute if you jump from homes to group meetings too quickly, you're going to kill depth. And the minute depth is killed, stagnates or plateaus, volume stops. Y'all with me there? I could spend an hour on that one point that we are going to expand on that very soon here. But so when I find a depth-based leader, if there's not some other leaders in there, those people are definitely treated as personally sponsored. Very important point, one of these cardinal rules again. Never delegate the depth building. Dig it yourself. I will never sit down with Dave and say, Dave, this is how you do it. Folks, this is too complicated. This is a secret. G.W. King's going to have to come over to my house and show me how to get that stupid turtle. Because I was World 3, Level 1, and I got him on the stair. Got the second one, I couldn't do it. I need somebody to hands-on mentor me to show me how to build depth. Never delegate the digging of depth. You've got to dig it yourself. You've got to be the one that shows them how to do it. All right? Now, we're finishing up here. What you do speaks so loudly that what you say I can't hear. You always do for them what they should do for themselves. But when they can finally do for themselves, you no longer do for them. You with me there? Is that too complicated? You keep doing for people. You keep building depth for them. Or homie, that's more of a tearing out here. You do for people what they can and should do for themselves. But once they start doing for themselves, that's why leadership many times is taken, not given. Once they show they have the leadership capability, and not just important here, sometimes you have people that start doing things that you know they should do, but if they're not bearing fruits, that you need to get back in there. Once in a while, people go, man, John, I can do that. And they do it. But unless their fruits are being born, you need to stay in there. Y'all with me? That's 1,000 times now, right? Basic insecurity. Little secret. You got to learn to counsel in depth. You don't just counsel with the head of the organization. You also learn how to counsel around the head and down in depth. In other words, building friendships in depth and counseling with people in depth. Now that's going to set off a certain amount of sparks. You know why? Ego enters in. That's like me saying, folks, you watch your upline of counsel in depth. Gee, he might make you rich. He might. I love Bill Britt to come down and talk to Jack. In fact, I pushed G.W. Jack and Horace to him. You want, and you know the best way to get the true story is a counsel in depth. This guy up here is going to blow smoke to you. He'll tell you, oh, gee, all the rosy scenarios. You come down here, you'll find out what's really happening. And Bill Britt told me that. I said, boy, that's right. And then I watched him do it. Did it hurt me? A little bit. Until I realized he was trying to make me rich. Then it didn't hurt so much. Make me rich, Bill. This means, boy, I get a bigger pro bonus, bigger EDC bonus. I'd love to have 15 crowns in depth. I'd like every one of you all to pass this. You all want to go to counsel with Bill? Man, do it. He won't ever let you, but when you're in the right. In other words, trust only motion. When you're working in depth and counseling in depth, you never go by what somebody says they're doing. You trust only motion. You look for results, not word power. Keep the group drawn out continually. Jack has picked up on it. I went diamond on a file folder. I drew my whole, sounds crazy, doesn't it? I drew my whole group out on a file folder. I've now gone to a notebook. Every leg has got a specific page. And I don't draw big circles. I don't draw the whole group out. The ones that aren't within the parameters of the system, I don't draw just to feed my ego. I draw bullshit, the truth about it. And beside each point, people I'm working with in the taproot has beside each person in the taproot a telephone number. The taproot is the main thing about the taproot is I know everybody in that taproot with phone numbers beside them. I'm building friendships as I go. So keep the group drawn out continually with phone numbers. I've already covered that, working around, not through with people until you find a leader. But always edify as you go, as you're working around people. Still edify them if they're edifiable. I've already covered that, hopefully. The most time you make depth mistakes are when you're working distance. We're now going to move into what I consider to be probably the most important part of the whole day. Now, there are some real big mistakes that are made and will be continually made. Let me tell you one first thing off. When I do a home meeting for David, your goal is to do what? Number one, to sponsor people for David. Create volume by doing that. But the main thing, when I get to your house, David, my main goal is that night when I'm focusing, to get out of your house into the next house. You never want to stay in a house and stay there. Now, if I'm a Crown Direct, I may tell you, hey man, find a good house and stay there. But the minute you find a good house and stay there, depth stops. And when the depth stops, what happens to volume? Volume plateaus. So maybe I'm a Crown Direct. How I work my business is different from how you work it. My time is different. So possibly when I'm a Crown Direct, or even a double, I might work my time different. I might be forced to stay at a good house. But until you are our direct or going diamond, let me tell you, this is the thing. If you stay in a house more than a few meetings, you're dead meat. How about that? Now your volume stops. If you stay in a house more than a few meetings, you're dead meat. How about that? Now your volume stops. And that's why at distance, it is so critical that you learn how to book a meeting from a meeting. Another teaching you may have heard that is, again, may apply to different situations, but it's basically a very erroneous teaching. Here it is. If I sponsor you, David, I'm going to walk around the guns on this one, boy. If I sponsor you, the worst thing I could tell you to do, I'm going to repeat this. If I sponsor you, David, my goal is to get 3 to 4 people sponsored for you. Pick the best litter, pick the litter, the best leg, and start working the taproot down. The worst thing the very worst thing, I'm going to say this again, David, the very worst thing I could tell you to do is do not come down there with me. Forget about your model leg, forget about the taproot, and go bring on some more width. If you do that, folks, you're making a big mistake. It's critical because I've got to show him how to do these next few things. Number one, if I'm come over to your house, David, and if you at a distance, I'm sorry, I'm getting so wound up here, this is important. At a distance meeting, if I did not book from your house out of that house. See, it's so easy, folks, when you're doing the plan. You walk in, the board's set up for you, right? The introduction is proper, the boyos are there, everything's great. But if you think you've done your job that night by just walking in and doing the circles, you're confusing activity with accomplishment. You've not done your work that night. When I do a plan, when you do a plan, this is what you should do. It's critical. I come to your house. I've taught you all the proper things going in the house. What does a quality invite do now? We're spending more time on our front end review to get better results on the other end. We're spending more time helping you list the names, TQIs, all this stuff at the beginning. Now, during the break, what do? It's very important. I have a little giant food notebook up here, 39 cents. And during the break, I'm going around and meeting all the new people. Critical, folks. And David is mentoring, watching me handle questions, interact with negative people there. But what am I trying to do? My goal then is not just to show the plan, but to teach him how to interface with people during the break. All right? It's critical. That's why the rest of the people should shut up. When the direct's down there, and somebody asks a question, once in a while have somebody else answer it. I feel like going, bang! What should he do? He should listen. How the direct is answering those questions. Unless the direct pushes him to answer it. But I go around during the break, David, and I'm collecting data on all your prospects that were there that night. And then what do I do? In the meeting after the meeting, folks, critical, I sit down with you and your wife or whatever, sit down with you, and tell you the feelings I had about those prospects that night. See, by the way, the notes, I actually make notes in a little notebook. I also write down what I handed out, what my feelings, because I got a little irritated losing things all the time. So, by the way, David, I handed out 3 Boyos tonight. It's your responsibility to get that back. So number one, it's a way for me to track what I handed out. All right? But the primary reason is to help you develop a strategy how you should follow up on those 3 people. Can you imagine working 6 legs, folks, and building depth? Try to follow up on all those people in depth? How do you do it? I sit there during the break, collect data on the prospects. The meeting after the meeting, they all gone. I sit down with David and Mary now. I said, listen, there's some good people here tonight. I thought the meeting went real. By the way, you did great. I may have let him do the 5-point wrap-up as his self-image. He used to being on the board up in front of people. All right? But I will then develop a strategy for how you should follow up on your people. By the way, see Joe over here, young kid? He's in a mental intensive care. He's flighted. Get back to him tomorrow. He's the type of guy that's going to go ask all his friends tonight about this. Right over here, smoking a pipe with a beard, very intellectual. Go take him, I'll maybe recommend a couple more tapes. Let him be cerebral for a couple days, you know. So I help develop a strategy how you should follow up. That's why when you do a meeting, folks, you always want to make sure there's a second meeting you can tell those people to come back to. That's why I want to book 2 home meetings. So David has a strategy, and actually you announced that night when the second look could be. Y'all with me? So I'm basically telling David this is how you should be following up on these people. Then in a couple of days, who do I follow up on? David. I see whether or not David's done what, then work around him and follow up on those people personally. Because at that point I know that he is not my leader. And that's where I've got the list of names in here. And I start working around him. At that point he became a doorway to me to depth. How do you follow up in depth? It is critical to follow up in depth. All right, David, let's go back now. When I'm working depth, when I find the best pick of the litter, I take you with me down that taproot leg. And what I'd like to do is have you, if I sponsor Steve here, I'll have you go over with him how to make a list of names, make some phone calls. You're going to be mentoring him. Then when I come to his house and do the meeting, you make sure he knows how to set the board up, does the introduction. You're doing that for me. So I'm working your depth. But you're probably coming with me to Steve's first meeting that night. Why? To watch me how to interact during the break with his prospects. But guess what we're doing that night? My goal is to book a meeting from Steve's house. But guess what we're doing that night? My goal is to book a meeting from Steve's house to his next prospect's house. That's where so many of y'all are dropping the ball, I promise you. Am I right? How many of y'all have done this? And to me, it's habitual. That's why I was down in Double Diamond. The guy was looking at me and said, John, we stopped doing that. I said, you're kidding me. I guess I forgot to teach it, or somebody has. But it's so habitual in me that the minute I come to a house, boy, out comes the counter. My goal is to get out of that house to the next house. I'm gone. If you're back for a second look, Tom, you know what I do? During the break, I'm going around. This makes some sense. You're here for the second time tonight, by the way. Where are you from? Blah, 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 blah. What's your name, by the way? Al, how you doing? What do you do for a living? You're over Steve's meeting here. You tell me. I said, fantastic. We started to talk. Oh, is this your first time here tonight? I say, yes. If you're shaking your head to him, he can't say no. I say, makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? He's in. It's subject close. Right for the juggler. I'm not going to go, let's go back and see it 15 more times. I'm trying to book a meeting in this place. And if Al's there, if he's there for the first time in a hot prospect, I may go for it right that night. And if you're Steve's prospect, I mean, Steve, come over here a second. I say, Al, what nights you busy next week? Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Steve, I tell you what, Tuesday night, Steve, why don't you go over to Al's house and help him make a list of names and help you get started. Al, you won't believe this thing. It's crazy. Steve's going to come over and help you on Tuesday. It may not work 100% of the time, but at least you're pushing. You're trying. Your goal is to get in depth. And folks, once you learn this, how to book a meeting from a meeting, it becomes habitual. And boy, you talk about depth, flying in depth. That's how particularly if I'm taking David with me. David and I are flip-flopping in depth. I may book David over at his house for his first home. I'll book 2 home meetings with Al. And Steve is sponsoring Al. Steve is going to help Al get started with it. But if Steve is sponsoring, David is sponsoring Steve, Dave will probably do the first meeting for Al. What I'm trying to do is teach people how to follow up in depth, and also I'm using other people to book meetings in depth. You with me? I would like you to do the first meeting for him, because he probably isn't any good. But when you get things humming down there, I'd like to come in and do the second meeting. And so you and I will start flip-flopping or frog leaping down in depth. You do the first one, you book me, I'll do the second one, and we work together. And you book me, and I'm down here, I'll do the second meeting down here, we just flip-flop down in depth. But the main thing, the process, again, is to take the time with you, initially to set up a good home meeting, and then at your break to collect data. After the meeting's all over with, what do? Sit down and develop a strategy how he follows up, and then follow up on him to make sure he did it. And then if somebody's there, the first night hot prospect, you book right there. Second look, what's he doing? Here for the second time tonight, Al? Makes more sense, doesn't it, the second time? Now, if you've got a big shot there, folks, bear with me, your people skills. If he's a real big shot, strong ego, never challenge a strong ego. Stroke it. All right? That's not the time, because I've got lots of nuclear warheads here. But you'd be surprised how gentle I am. That's not the time to pull out all the Hawkins posturing techniques. Remember this, Dale Carnegie techniques are going to pay you better rewards than nuking them and sinking them. All right? You want them to like you. Tom Norman said one time, 88% of people will buy what you're selling if they like you, respect you, and have confidence in you. So what are you trying to do? Be like. Not show how strong you are. If the guy's real successful, see, this thing will never work. I know how you feel. I'll tell you what, I felt the same way. Let me tell you what I found. Feel, felt, found. Stroke his ego. Say, man, your success. Found. Stroke his ego. Say, man, your success. Probably understands the residual income better than most people do. No, you don't spar with him, folks. You understand what I'm saying? Al, you here for the second time tonight? This makes sense, doesn't it? Shaking my head, yes. Well, Steve, I tell you what nights you busy? Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Steve, Tuesday night, you come over and help me get started. If Dave's sponsoring Steve, I may book Dave to do your first meeting. Because all Steve is doing is helping you get your list of names established prior to your first 2 home meetings. I may have David actually do your first home meeting. Then I'll come and do your second one. Y'all with me there? Have a flip-flop in there? And that is a powerful thing, folks. Hope some of that stuff made sense to you. If you can understand this last little bit here about how to physically book a meeting from your meeting, what you should see at big opens, what should you see happening at big open opportunity meetings? Calendars coming out. And people booking with prospects right there. One reason why I focus so well. Sometimes right there. One reason why I focus so well. Sometimes people go to home meetings or opens. They make it a big social affair. Do you know who I'm talking to? The new people. I'm not talking to the old. I'm not there to socialize with all the old people. In fact, sometimes I'm almost abrupt with them. I'm there to do what? Get in depth. So who should you be spending your time with? The new leaves on the tree. Because the new leaves will feed the trunk. Don't talk to the trunk. Right? Why is it so critical for David to come with me in depth down the taproot? There is a thing called a negative learning curve. And if I don't take you in depth with me, David, down the taproot and flip-flop with you and show you how during the break to respond to questions, to handle negative people, and to book a meeting from a meeting, how to develop follow-up strategies, I'm asking you to go out and build your width at the base of the negative learning curve and have hands-on teaching how to kill that stupid turtle in Nintendo. So for me to tell you, now David, I'm going to go down your taproot, you forget about it now. You go work your width. I'm sending you out to start doing the hardest thing with the least amount of knowledge. It is critical you're with me in depth. And plus, we compound our time flip-flopping in depth. I've done the best I can to give the secrets to find turtle in 100 lives. I honestly, all my heart, if you'll take this information, the knowledge you've One, you'll still it'll make sense when you start applying it. You can write it on a piece of paper today, or hear it on tape. And actually, you're in comment trying to apply. That's a lot of stuff will make more sense to you. Not something you can hear once. That's why I feel bad about teaching all this regularly, because it's something you need to hear 60 times. This is the secret to the business right here. If you understand there are secrets in the business, this is probably just one. This is how you get the 100 lives in Nintendo. The message today, you have the knowledge. You are willing to do the work you came here today. And I believe with all my heart, each one of you this time. God bless you. Have a good day. Jack, come on up here, please.
This recording is exclusive property Network 21. Duplication is strictly prohibited without written permission Network 21. No one can guarantee that the techniques approaches suggested in this cassette will work for you. We hope, however, ideas presented herein will assist you in developing a strong and profitable business. This material is offered independently of the Amway Corporation and has been reviewed or endorsed by the Amway Corporation.